Welcome to the Generation Elevation podcast, a conscious, connected platform for those who are ready to manifest their dream life. I'm your host, Elise Riley, a former PT, now motivational speaker, igniting empowerment and transformation all across the globe. Here at Generation Elevation, we are committed to bringing you the most inspiring guests who will share their stories, wisdom, and advice to help you progress closer to living a life of your own terms. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Generation Elevation. Today, I have a super special guest with me, and he is on a mission to make change work simple and dangerously effective so people can change the way they think, feel, and act. For the past 4 years, he has been teaching and certifying people in tools to create rapid and long-lasting change. This human has a heart of gold, and he has been a huge catalyst for everything that I know. So it is an absolute honor to introduce to you today, Luke Pearce.
Lace, my goodness, how are you doing? I tell you what, I actually want that bio. I want that little intro. I got to keep that. I got to write it down. I got to use it for the future. So thank you very much. It is, it's really exciting to be here because who knows where our conversations are going to end up. I mean, 9 times out of 10, they always end up somewhere pretty cool. So I'm very excited and curious to find out where it goes.
Who knows where we're going to go today? And yeah, like you said, literally, like whenever we chat, Luke, I know that it's always what we need to hear or everyone else needs to hear at that time. So I'm looking forward to today also.
Very cool. Very cool.
So I'm sure my listeners are probably wondering, who is this Luke Pearce guy? So with that said, where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
So I am originally from Hervey Bay, which is about 4 hours north of the Gold Coast. I've been on the Gold Coast now for, how long? Probably like the last 12 years, and grew up in, obviously Hervey Bay. A small sort of like country, beachy town. Not really much was going on there, hence why, I left and came to the coast.
Nice. And how old are you?
I had to think about that then. 33, 34 at the end of this year.
Amazing. And what do you do for work right now?
So I certify and teach people in self-mastery techniques. So this is change work, how they can change the way they think, feel, and act. So they can either become a coach, become a healer, a mentor themselves, or they can just use the tools to make whatever it is that they're doing, whether they're a teacher, whether they're a mother, have more impact and have more effect for themselves and their family.
And have you always done that?
No, definitely not. I mean, back in the day in Hervey Bay, like I've had many different jobs, right? But my first real job or, certification or training was a butcher. So I'm a butcher by trade. That was many years and many moons ago now. But yeah, from being a butcher, I moved into personal training. And then from personal training, I got into the mindset work because within the first 6 weeks of being on the gym floor, I started to look and I started to observe, and I'm like, this has got very little to do with the human body. Now, obviously the human body plays a big role, but I was thinking to myself and witnessing, why are some people coming in and they're absolutely killing themselves? They're doing everything that they possibly can, but no offense to them, but they look like a big bag of shit. They look like they're going to drop dead. And then you would have like old Mrs. Jones come in. She'd come in and she'd probably drink more coffee than she did actually work out, but she was glowing. There was something about her and those type of people that really caught my fascination, my curiosity. And that's when I started to dive in and ask questions like, hey, what are you doing that this person isn't? And that's when I found out that, obviously the mindset side of things is really where it's all at. You want to go to the master, not the apprentice, to get, the results or get the life that you want.
Yeah, wow, so powerful. Oh, we're on fire today. I can already feel it. And Luke, one last question. What is your favorite?
The first thing that pops into my mind is a journey of 1,000 miles or 1,000 kilometers starts with a single step. That was the very first quote that I had to put on my little photo at the gym. They said, Luke, you need a quote. Everyone else has got a quote. And I'm thinking, oh shit, what have I got? What have I got? And that was the thing that popped into my head, right? And still to this day, it's sometimes it's very cliche, very corny because it's so common. But I truly do believe that, that journey that we're all on, sometimes, not even sometimes, all the time, it starts at that one single step. And normally when people do take that one single step, that's when everything begins to change.
Wow. Well, that is a perfect transition, I guess, into how you went from being a butcher to now being a mindset coach and helping people with self-mastery techniques. Like, what was that, first step where you were like, all right, things have got to change for me?
Yeah, I mean, this is always the question, not only for me, but everyone else as well. We've all had these pivotal moments within our life that really shape what it is that we're doing right now. Some people have one, some people have 100, right? It all depends on their path and what it is that they've done. I can still remember very, very vividly that for me personally, the very first thing that really made me wake up is that every single thing, and I'm talking about every single thing within my world, started to crumble away. My girlfriend, my partner that I had at the time, she left me because I was being a big old, not a very nice person, let's put it that way. My health and my fitness was just non-existent. I was, a borderline alcoholic. I was drinking in the morning. I was smoking like a freaking chimney. I was punching on the weekends, going out to pubs and nightclubs and just doing all these really silly and stupid things if I look back on them now. I was hanging out with the wrong people. I was broke financially. I had no idea who I was, what I wanted to do. I was very lost. So if you look at it in that aspect, the very first thing was everything started to crumble down around me. And I got to a certain point where I'm like, this is bullshit. I don't want to do, and this is at 18. I'm like, I don't want to live like this. I do not want to live the rest of my eternity, the rest of my days, if I'm only 18 and nothing's working. Now, there was many, many, many moments of pain and of things not working out to get me to that point of waking up. But I still remember the moment that I woke up was really, really empowering because it was the first time that I took a good look at what was going on within my life. It was the first time that I was honest and truthful with myself. And I said, hey, everything has turned to shit. You cannot deny it anymore. You cannot put a Band-Aid on it anymore. You cannot distract yourself anymore because if you keep on distracting yourself, you're either going to end up in jail, you're going to significantly hurt someone, or you're going to significantly hurt yourself. There wasn't too many options. You know what I mean? And in that moment, I remember hearing this voice within inside my head, right? And I thought I was going bloody crazy. But I also thought, man, I'm probably, pretty whacked out of my mind on booze and all the rest of it anyway. So who knows what was going on. But this little voice, which now I call my intuition, was like, hey, if you can create this big old shit show, you can create what it is that you want by simply doing the opposite. And I tell you what, that got my attention. That was a massive epiphany for me in that moment at 18 years old. I've created literally everything by doing what it is that I've done. If I did the opposite, I would get the opposite result. And in that moment, I started going through a checklist in my mind of the things that weren't working out, and I would do the opposite. I was smoking, I stopped smoking. Now, that was a saga that still went on for a few years, but at least I put it into play. I was drinking heavily, right? Like drinking in the morning, all sorts of crazy things, getting absolutely blind, rotten drunk 3 to 4, nights a week. I stopped doing that. I started looking after my health and fitness. I started, looking into this little thing called self-development and self-help. And I started reading a book by a guy called Tony Robbins. A lot of you guys would probably know who that man is. And it was Unleash the Power Within. And I never, ever in my, short 18 years of living, I never even knew that this stuff was around. And I'm like, hang on a second. Someone has written a book. Someone's written a book that tells you what to do and what not to do. And that blew my mind. I was fascinated by that. I was asking the people, like the boys at work, I'm like, have you ever heard of this dude? And they're like, nah, never heard of him. I asked my mom, you ever heard of Tony Robbins? Like, none. I asked my dad, have you ever heard of him? None. I'm like, have you heard of self-development or self-help? They're like, oh, not really. And I thought that I was living in this bit of a twilight zone, because it wasn't almost, it was exactly like I stepped into a different dimension. I stepped into a different world, and it was leaving the old world behind and stepping into this new world of, hang on a second, what if? What if I actually sorted my life out? What if I, looked after myself physically? What would happen? What if I started to chase the dreams, the things that I wanted to see within the world? And it all started with myself. I had to ask myself the question, what's the number one thing that I want? And the first word that popped in my mind was peace. I want to be at peace with myself. In the outside world, they can drop bombs, they can do whatever they want to do, but if I'm at peace with inside myself, no one can take that away from me. And for a very large portion of my life, I lived the life of, so-called victim mentality of letting other people have my power. And that wasn't bringing peace. That was bringing chaos. That was bringing, turmoil. That was bringing a big old shit show of what I was living. And like I said, in that moment where I said, hey, you can create whatever it is you want, just literally do the opposite. And then I said, well, what is it that you actually want? I'm like, I want peace. Like, I actually want inner peace. I want to be happy with myself, because at that moment in time, I was my biggest enemy. I was trying to kill myself, but I was doing it in ways that didn't look like so-called suicide. Just because you kill yourself slowly, that's still suicide in my mind. You're fucking trying to kill yourself. That's a silly thing to do, And I really had to, so-called take a good look at myself in the mirror and be like, dude, what are you doing? Like, what the actual fuck? You're 18. This is not you. You're not a mean person. You're not a stupid person. You're not a bad person, but you are doing stupid things. You are making silly decisions, and you are making bad choices, hence why you're living the life that you're living right now. And like I said, it's been, this has been going on for bloody over 12, 13 years now of changing and diving into so-called self-mastery and discipline and what you want and what you don't want. It's been a hell of a journey, but that's where it really all started. It was like making that decision of, you said that I could swear before we start on the podcast, but making that decision of like, you know what, fuck this, never again, and no more. And I truly believe, and I tell my students all the time, like when you say those three phases, like fuck this, never again, and no more, I can guarantee you that the change has already happened and you're on a different path. You're literally on a different timeline. And that's really where a lot of beauty begins to happen, because people are not stupid. People are not dumb. People are not, riddled with fear and all these sorts of things. They just need a little bit of encouragement. They just need a little bit of guidance. They just need someone saying, hey, I don't know about you or anyone else, but I reckon you can actually fucking do it. And not only do I reckon you can do it, I know that you can do it. Go out and have a crack. See where you end up. It can't be any worse. This is another thing that I said to myself. How could it get any worse? What did I have to lose? Nothing. So I was like, oh, well, fuck it. Let's go. Let's see what happens.
That is incredible. And especially like that what if worst case scenario to what if best case scenario. I literally just did a podcast on that, a solo episode. So that's just like, perfect. And it's really interesting. A lot of people I've spoken to have mentioned how everything around them kind of just came crumbling down and life was happening to them very much in a victim mindset, and how you have changed that perspective to be changing your experience, changing that label to how is this happening for me? And that's helped you get to where you are now. So I would love to know, and I think this will really benefit the listeners, what would be like some reflection questions, maybe 3, that you could ask yourself to, I guess, see whether you are in that victim mindset and potentially like be the catalyst for momentum out of that?
So the first thing that comes to mind, especially when you said the 3 questions, I truly believe that these are probably some of the most powerful questions that you can ask yourself. Number 1 is, what do I want more of? So what do I want more of in my life? Number 2 is, what do I want less of in my life? And number 3 is, what do I want to keep the same? Now, if you can come up with 3 lists and you just write down on the back of a piece of paper or on your computer, a spreadsheet, whatever it is, if you can write down a list of whatever it is that those things are, then you can start getting to work on what you need to focus on, what you don't need to focus on, and what you got to keep the same. 9 times out of 10, it is a very simple little process that will shed a lot of light of what's going on. Now, you can use that as in reflection from the past. You can use it in the now moment. You can use it into the future, depending on what column you look into.
Wow, that's so powerful. I love that so much. And I think the listeners will definitely be like, their brains are now ticking. I can hear it already.
Yeah, it's like, shit, actually, what do I want more of? Because it's a powerful thing, right? I asked myself, back in the day when I was looking in that mirror, right? So what actually happened, sort of the long version story of it, I woke up one morning and I was living in my sister's garage. She had a double-story house, and underneath was obviously a garage, like an old Queenslander. And I lived underneath, right, on a mattress. It sounds so silly to even say this, but on a mattress, and I had a big screen TV. I had my fridge. I had everything. I had like my own little bachelor pad. I cooked on a barbecue out the front. It was the coolest thing ever, right? Well, I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And I was just turned 18, so I had no one really telling me what I could and couldn't do. So I went, it was party town, right? Monday through to Sunday, party every night. And this one specific time, we had so much rain that because we were on a hill, it would come through underneath the house, as in the shed where I was living, and it would flood. So I woke up that morning after having an absolute skinful the night before. I was still drunk in the morning. And I remember I put my feet on the ground and it was like in puddles. I was like, what the fuck? This is not good. And I got up, my mattress is all wet, my TV's covered in water, the fridge is blown up, it was just absolute chaos. There's cigarette butts everywhere. And I sort of, got my wits about me and I thought, oh man, I better go for a shower because I had to go to work, right? So I had to be at work at 6 o'clock in the morning. And as I walked into the bathroom, there was a massive mirror there. You couldn't miss it. It was the first thing that you saw. And as soon as I saw myself in the mirror, that's when I had that epiphany. I don't know what happened in that moment, but about 3 or 4 minutes felt like about an hour to 2 hours. I remember looking myself in the mirror, and to start with, I was just disgusted. And I remember saying to myself, what in the actual fuck is going on here? Because it was like my true self or whatever it is that was in me awoken and came to the front of the bus and said, hey, what is going on here? This is madness. If we keep doing this, we ain't going to do this for very much longer, right? And, like I said, looking in that mirror, I had to ask myself the question, and this is exactly what I said. I'm like, for fuck's sake, this is not rocket science. What do you want? Just tell me, what do you want? And I was like, I just want peace. I just want to be happy. And, I just want a family of my own. I remember saying that, since I was 5 years old. I'm like, I just want a family of my own and I want to do my own thing and blah, 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 blah. And this was that moment where I started asking those questions. And I was like, okay, great. Well, what am I doing right now that is helping that out? And it was only a small list. I'm like, well, at least it's something. I'm like, and what am I doing right now that is taking away from that list? And that list was very fucking big. And then I was like, okay, and what do I want to keep? And I was like, okay, well, I want to keep this. I want to keep this. I don't want to keep doing that because they're going to kill me, and this is actually what I want to do. But I didn't really know. It's easy for me now to look back because I've had, nearly 13 years of life in order to look back in hindsight. But at the time, I just knew that things had to change. I had no idea. I had no idea what specifically I wanted to do. I just knew that I didn't want to keep doing what I was doing.
I love that question of what do you want, because I believe that so many of us can get stuck in that thinking about what we don't want in our life and what's going wrong. So to change that perspective and really perceive what it is that you want, that is super powerful. And I'm curious, Luke, in regards to feeling happy within yourself and being at peace, what does that mean to you?
Look, this is a moment by moment thing, right? And something that for the last 3 weeks has been right at the forefront, because happiness, realistically, well, for me, it's like satisfaction in what it is that you're doing. If you're happy with what you're doing, if you can look out into your world, if you can look within you and be like, hey, I'm actually really happy how things are going. That means that there's a pretty high level of satisfaction, a pretty high level of fulfillment, a pretty high level of contentment in the things that you want to experience. Do you know what I mean? But if you're waking up and you're going to do something that you do not want to do, So for myself, back in the day, being a butcher, I love being a butcher. But the whole working with the public in that sector, it just crushed my soul. Like, it honestly just crushed my soul after a while. I was like, you know what, this is madness. I don't want to do this anymore. So that was one aspect or one example of, if you're going to do things that you don't really want to do and they're not serving a higher purpose, I can guarantee you're not going to be happy, because you're not content, you're not fulfilled, and, you know, you're not satisfied with what it is that you're doing. They're all same, but different. But if you can then change things and be like, well, hang on a second, this is what I'm choosing to do, even if it sucks, even if it's really hard to start with, at least you've chosen it. At least you've got some sort of influence over it, and you can say, yeah, but I decided to do that. So therefore, for me, I'm happy, I'm content, I'm doing the things that I want to do on my terms. And obviously sometimes you got to give and take, right? But at the end of the day, if you can truly be honest and, so-called truthful with yourself, you'll find out if you're happy with things or not. And 9 times out of 10, you're only unhappy with the things that aren't going your way.
Wow, I love that. And yeah, because you also mentioned like intuition as well before. And so I guess I have seen a lot of people getting into the personal development space and struggle to trust in that voice, because there's those two voices, the one of survival and then that intuition, the higher self, the voice of the soul. And so how would you distinguish the two?
This is a really powerful question. I've had this quite a few times, and I've dove into it, so to speak, myself a lot. It's like, how do you distinguish which ones they are? Because sometimes the so-called ego, or sometimes the so-called other voices, can disguise themselves as really nice, really bloody pleasant. Oh yeah, let's do this, or don't do that. Don't worry about this. But realistically, the little voice, for me, it's a voice. My intuition, I always say, hey, I got to listen to my intuition, and I normally point towards my heart. It comes from around here. But some people see it. Some people are very, very visual. They're like, oh, I just got a sign. I just got a signal. I just got a signal from my intuition. So that's cool. You got to work with you. So if you are not auditory, if you are not hearing your intuition, then don't do that. See it if you see it. Feel it if you feel it. Sometimes people say, oh, I've just got a gut feeling. Or I've just got a feeling in my head that it just says no, or it says yes, or whatever it might be. But for me personally, if you want to play along with this game, I think this is pretty cool. I actually got this from Dr. John DeMartini. So if you haven't heard of him, fucking genius, right? But he says your intuition is something that you can tap into and you can actually use. So you ask yourself the question, okay, answer these questions. You're always mean. You're always sad. You're always negative. You're always grumpy. You're always cranky. You're always, pessimistic. You always see the downside of life. You're always poor. You're always tired. And inside, there's something that's saying like, no, that's not true. That's not actually true, right? So you've got to work out what that sign is for you. And then you flip the coin. You say, okay, great. Well, let's change the game. Now let's say you're always beautiful. You're always happy. You're always amazing. You're always positive. You're always rich. You're always abundant. And all of a sudden there's that little thing that's been like, meh, I would like to think so, but I don't think it's actually true. And they say, okay, great. Then you change the question. You say, sometimes you're cranky, and sometimes you're really happy. Sometimes you are, really tired, and sometimes you're really energized. Sometimes you can look absolutely amazing, and sometimes you can look like a bit of a bogan. Like for me, right? Sometimes I look like a bit of a bogan. That's all right. That's where I came from. But sometimes I can look really, really good. And all of a sudden, that little thing within inside yourself is like, oh, yeah, I actually agree with that. Yep. And you can then decipher between the two, because if you start to live on the intuition just telling you that, oh, everything is doom and gloom, you're set up for like a massive, it's going to be rough. But if you also go to the opposite end of the pendulum, the opposite end of the coin, and you're like, no, everything is great, nothing is ever wrong. It's like, that's going to set you up for a disaster. Because things are going to now start to happen in your life in order to bring you back into balance. And if you're always on one side of the coin, and you're not observant of both sides of the coin, you're delusional. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things. You got to find out, okay, my intuition, how does it communicate with me? You will know because it is you. It's not this bloody fucking entity that, that is controlling you. You're not a puppet, but it's something within you. It is a part of you. So maybe just asking yourself a simple question. Hey, give me a sign, give me a signal, give me some sort of communication of what my intuition is. So for me personally, that little thing, whatever it is within my chest is like, yeah, been here for a long time. So it's something that I hear. But like I said, for other people, maybe they see it. For some people, maybe they feel it.
Yeah, I definitely believe that I feel it and also hear it if I'm making small day-to-day decisions and things like that. And I can also see signs like from day to day too.
Yeah.
And I'm really curious as well, because obviously being a male and coming into this like space of energetics and consciousness and personal development, I can see how a lot of people would perceive that as a very like feminine thing. And like, I know that a few people that I've come into contact with have avoided personal development and looking into soul work and intuition and things like that because it's considered woo. And so I'd love to get your take on like being a male coming into this sort of space.
Yes, whether you're male or female, the most powerful person is an integrated person. I don't care who you are, where you come from. The most powerful people on the planet are integrated people, both the yin and the yang, both the masculine and the feminine, right? So if you're a so-called guy and you're coming into the world of personal development, one of the most powerful things that you can have is you can have your so-called feminine side of things integrated within, because then you can use that as a tool. You can use that as a strength. And same thing with if you're a so-called female, whatever it is that you want to do, if you've got the masculine side of things and the feminine, you're a fucking superpower. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's why if you try and only stick to one side, all right, and there's many people out there having many different experiences. There's no right, there's no wrong. People do whatever the fuck people want to do, right? Yeah. But if you only want to stay on one side of the coin, you're probably only going to have that experience. So perfect example, if you are in the game of change and your only toolbox your only tool in your toolbox was a really masculine approach. We got to do shit. We got to get shit done. We got to kill the fucking beast. That's only going to work for a certain amount of people. Some people, they'll be like, fuck that. What is this dude or what is this lady on about? She on crack. Like, no, that's not for me. But then again, if you take the other end of the spectrum and you go in with the really feminine side of things and you sit down, you got the crystals and the fucking bloody oils and all these sorts of things, for some people, they're going to be like, man, I don't know what the hell's going on here. I want to get some shit done. But if you've got both sides, of the coin, then you can really look at people, you can ask them some really intelligent, powerful questions, and you can see where the imbalance is. You'd be like, wow, this person is so much in their masculine, it's really starting to hurt them. So what do? Well, we balance it out with the feminine, with the opposite side. And
it's really cool. And for the listeners to clarify, like masculine and feminine doesn't mean male or female either. It's the energy behind it. So what Luke was saying in regards to doing and getting shit done, it's very much masculine. And then the feminine is very much receiving and nurturing and recovering, rejuvenating. And
listening, intuition, all these things that we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Now, so I find this fascinating because the thing is, you could be a feminine side of things and you could be really in touch with your intuition and you could be really switched on all these sorts of things. But if the so-called masculine, if the go-getter energy is not within there, then all of a sudden we've got a, like it's not integrated, it's not aligned. We have disalignment, right? One's going this way and one's going that way. So that's why I was saying, the most powerful person or the most powerful people are integrated people, and you know who they are. You don't have to ask. Yeah. A perfect example is if a black belt in jiu-jitsu, right? For some people out there, you would know what I'm talking about, but you can use your imagination. It's pretty easy to comprehend. If they go into a pub or a nightclub, the person that is a black belt in jiu-jitsu does not walk around beating their chest. They don't go and start fights. They don't go and do all these sorts of things. They do not do that. Why? They do not have to, because they know that within that they're a freaking killer, right? Other people know that. They don't touch them. They don't look at them. They leave them alone. It just doesn't happen, right? Why? Because the energy within is getting transmitted outside, and the other people, even if they're full of booze, they pick up on it.
Yeah.
They know this stuff. It's not rocket science.
Oh, I love this. And like, to make it relatable for the listeners so that they can really be like, oh, you know what, I've had this experience. My question is, get the list for the listeners. Have you ever been in a room and someone's walked in and you can automatically tell whether they're pissed off, angry, upset, or the opposite, where they are just glowing? Like, you can automatically tell from that person without them even saying anything or even knowing them.
Yeah. Another really good one is Bruce Lipton tells a story about the lion and the gazelle. And he says the gazelle does not have to walk up to the lion to ask the lion if he's going to eat him or not. Why? Because the gazelle knows. The gazelle knows that thing over there, if I get anywhere near it, it's going to eat me, right? And it's the same thing. This is the default setting that we as people have. That's why sometimes, exactly like you were just saying, Elise, you go into a room and you're like, oh my God, I don't know what's going on in here, but I don't feel good. I don't feel like I belong here. I feel like something bad might happen. I just feel off, whatever it might be. And then you can go into the very next room and you light up. You absolutely light up with energy, and you forget to eat. You forget what time it is. You know, your partner rings you up and says, are you coming home? Like, what are you doing? And you're like, oh, sorry, I just got caught. You know, I got caught up in the moment. The different worlds to live in.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can really resonate with when I was a PT, I was so in my masculine. And that's why I really want to clarify before. It doesn't mean feminine, like female, male, because I was obviously a female and I was very much in my masculine, getting shit done, getting up early, working like an absolute horse, you know, and that being on that one side of the coin, I completely burnt out. And there was like a week or two where I literally couldn't do anything but sleep. And I love how you really described the importance of having that both, because yeah, if you go like I did on that one side of the coin, go hard and being that masculine all the time, you burn out, you get tired, you get injured. And then vice versa, you don't get anything done when you're in your feminine all the time. So yeah, I love that concept.
Yeah, it's, you know, back in the day when I was doing PT, very similar to yourself. And I truly, from what I've witnessed, this is like a universal experience, and you can pick it from a mile away. I ended up getting to the point where I was training so much that I ended up with adrenal fatigue. You know, you end up with fatigue. You're like, oh, I'm tired, I'm run down, all these sorts of things. You start getting these little niggling injuries. And you're like, well, it's just because I'm training, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden you end up with like adrenal fatigue. And for me personally, I was functioning. How's this, right? Blows my mind. I'm like, shit, that actually happened. I was functioning for 4 hours a day. The rest I was sleeping. I would work 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours at nighttime, and that was it. Now, I thought that this was normal. And that was just when April, my wife, she came onto the scene and she's like, hey, it's Saturday and Sunday. I want to go to the beach. I want to do things. You literally can't wake up. This is a problem. I don't think this is a normal thing. Like, you need to go and see someone about this. And I went and saw a naturopath. As soon as I walked in and I sat down in her little lounge, she's like, I guarantee you right now that your adrenals are cactus.
Yeah,
and then we did all the tests, and yeah, there it was.
Being always in that parasympathetic state, that nervous system, and then not ever having time to, well, not in the sympathetic state, and then not ever having time to go back into that parasympathetic where you're resting, recovering, rejuvenating.
Yeah.
It's exhausting. And I believe that there's such a, I guess, movement in the personal development space that is like, go get shit done, like your mind is your limit, all this stuff. And it's great to get people building that momentum. And it's also important to really make sure that you are having, like, going with the rhythm of your body and listening to your intuition and being in your feminine too, so you can recover in that parasympathetic state.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like there's levels to everything, right? And it's like anything. To start something, normally you need a lot of fuel to get things moving. So what do? Right at the very start, within self-development, self-help, whatever people want to call it, now, they go like an absolute rocket. And they put the afterburners on and they're like, oh my God, this is the best thing. My life is amazing. And that's great. It really is great. But we need to understand, hang on a second, you're going to do this until you drop dead. Self-development is not necessarily something that you just do for a little bit and then you go back to the way that things were. Self-development, the first word is self. So you're going to do self until you drop dead. It's going to be something that you'll do every single day, whether you know it or not. So the reason why I say this is because I've fallen in the trap and I've seen thousands of other people fall in the trap as well of go, hustle, grind. And all of a sudden you get to the point where you are not happy. You get to the point where you are very unfulfilled. You get to the point where you are not purpose driven anymore. You might become a bit lost. I mean, shit, you might even become a little bit nihilistic, as in there's no point to anything. And once you get to that point, that's a pretty, depending on which way you go, it can be very dangerous or it can be very liberating, right? So, that's something that I see a lot.
Yeah, wow. And yeah, I can just resonate with that in my journey. I'm just reflecting back on these conversations. And that's why I love interviewing guests, because it really allows not just the listeners to get an insight and reflect on their own lives, but for me as well. And yeah, just reflecting back on when I was so heavily invested in personal training and going all the time, and then to kind of step out of that space, it was very liberating to just like completely be online, move up to the Gold Coast and just be more chill and enjoy life a bit more.
Yeah. And, and you'll go through different phases. You'll go through phases of let's chill for a little bit. And then you'll get this massive bit of insight, this massive bit of inspiration. And it's game time. Yeah. And then, you know what? You'll go through this and then you'll go through this and then you go through this. It's all a part. It's all a part of it.
Yeah. So powerful. And Luke, where can my listeners find you if they want to learn a bit more about what you do and, listen to more of your content?
Yeah, definitely. Go to www.selfmasterywithluke.com. Every single thing that I've ever done, everything that I ever will do will be plastered on there. So you can either find it on the website or jump on Facebook or Instagram. Just type in Luke Pearce and, you'll be able to find me there.
Amazing. And I'll pop all of your details in the show notes as well. And Luke, one final question to wrap up for today.
Oh, what you got?
So usually with all my guests, at the end, I get them to channel in a message or intuitively listen for something that they believe the listeners need to hear right now. And it doesn't necessarily need to be related to what we've been talking about today, but one message that you believe will benefit everyone listening.
Bad times aren't bad. Bad times aren't always bad. Through every step of the path, you're going to go through both so-called good and bad, but it is all the path. So if you're going through challenging times right now, which a lot of people are, it's okay. It's more than okay for things to be going to shit. Okay, because sometimes when things aren't working out the way that you want them to work out, it's actually setting you up for something beyond your wildest imagination. So I think if there was one thing, especially for myself, I got to take a spoonful of that myself. It's like, hey, it's okay to go through life and have challenging moments. It doesn't always have to be sunshine and rainbows. Give yourself a little bit of a pat on the back and, you're doing good.
I love that so much. And honestly, I'd be confident in saying that if everyone was to reflect on those challenging times they've had in their life so far, and then the positives that followed after that and the growth that came through after that challenging time, I have no doubt in saying that all of that stuff happens for us.
There would be a lot of enlightened people.
Yeah.
If you went back in your past and you did exactly what Elise just said, you would feel very, very differently.
Yeah, 100%. Well, thank you so much today, Luke. It's been a pleasure having you, and I can't wait to chat again soon.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being a part of the Generation Elevation community. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to leave a 5-star rating, written review, share, and tag me on Instagram at elise.riley. Until next time, keep loving, keep learning, and keep rising.